présenté, suivi d'une période de questions de 5 minutes. J'afficherai le temps restant à l'aide de 14 indicateurs à 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 secondes. Et les 10 dernières secondes, on va faire un décompte sur mes doigts. Je passerai le chronomètre quand vous commencez. Vous pouvez débuter quand vous êtes prêt.
Bonjour, il fait plaisir de vous rencontrer pour parler de nos investigations préliminaires pour l'audit de VLT. Alors, mon nom est Maxime et voici mes collègues Joshua et Christian. Today we will be going over the framework of our investigation in which we looked at some of the issues we potentially see in auditing the firm, as well as the guidelines in terms of how we approach our conclusions in terms of the importance of our findings, as well as their relevancy and their priority in our audit. In our accounting topics, we will talk about the specific issues we will need to address going forward with our audit, and in our conclusion, we will go over our overall recommendation and guidelines when approaching this the audit with VBT.
Donc bonjour tout le monde, ça me fait plaisir de vous présenter les généralités aujourd'hui. Donc ce sont les éléments pertinents du cas qui englobent l'intégralité de notre analyse. So the generalities, these are a few background factors which we'll use to help identify what are the key risks for this client in terms of their audit, what are the potential motivations of their management, and what is your audit really going to focus on. So first of all, I'll give you a little bit of a background of the company. So this is a very small client. They follow ASPE, and they're operating in a very competitive environment with some big firms. Why this is relevant? Well, when they're producing their financial statements, they will have a potential motivation to show that they're competitive with the other big players in their industry so that they can acquire financing. Now, the owner of this company, and there's one owner and he's the sole shareholder. Josh, can you tell me a little bit about him?
Bien sûr, merci Christian. La chose la plus importante quand on considère vraiment le rôle du propriétaire et du dirigeant de la compagnie, c'est quoi le rôle qu'il a directement sur les livres et les comptes de la compagnie. Alors, on sait très bien que Jean, en ce moment, il est en charge de la comptabilité de la compagnie. Donc, ça crée déjà un conflit un peu d'intérêt qu'on peut voir là-dedans parce que le propriétaire qui a accès aux livres, ça peut mener déjà au début le fait qu'il voudrait peut-être manipuler un petit peu les chiffres pour se montrer plus compétitif. Le fait qu'il est vraiment aussi inclus dans la comptabilité, ça augmente notre risque d'audit, justement. Vu qu'il y a peut-être, justement, encore, je me répète encore, potentiel de manipuler les chiffres. Puis la plus grosse affaire qui va nous aider à souligner ça, c'est les utilisateurs des états financiers. L'utilisateur principal des états financiers, ça va être l'institution financière qui leur a accordé un prêt de 500 000 $ sous deux conditions. Ces deux conditions sont qu'ils respectent des ratios spécifiques aux états financiers. Donc, on a le ratio d'actifs courants sur dette courante qui doit être de 1,2 ou plus élevé et le ratio de dette sur capitaux propres qui doit être de plus bas que 2. Ça, c'est, comme j'ai dit, très important à considérer parce que vu que l'entreprise dépend du prêt de 500 000 $ pour continuer ses exploitations, il y a peut-être justement motivation à manipuler un petit peu les chiffres pour qu'ils puissent continuer l'exploitation dans les prochaines années en gardant le prêt. Parce que la banque a spécifiquement dit dans le contrat que s'ils ne respectaient pas ces ratios-là, la banque allait révoquer le prêt. Et finalement, je vais vous passer à mon collègue Christian qui va vous parler un petit peu des concerns généraux aussi.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Josh. So when we were looking at the financial statements, we noticed some changes from prior year, which brought up some concerns. So their revenue level has stayed constant between 2014 and 2015. However, over that same time period, their receivables increased 30% and their payables increased 50%, which indicates that they may have trouble collecting from their clients, and they may also be trying to defer payments to their suppliers, which could indicate possible cash flow issues. Given that the bank could potentially recall their debt if they don't meet the minimum ratios that are required, this cash flow issue could be a major concern for the going concern of the company, and that's something that you have to really pay attention to in your audit work. So moving forward, there are several accounting issues that were brought up for this client, and we had to rank which ones are the most important for you to focus your audit work on. So we have a few cloud bubbles, which are the guiding decisions we use to prioritize the accounting issues. First of all, Josh, what can you tell me about what types of accounts we want to look into?
Thank you, Christian. So what we really want to take a look at is what are the impact on the high-risk accounts. When we're looking at the high-risk accounts in this case, it's about the accounts that are affecting our given ratios that the bank has provided us. So, for example, we have capital assets, current liabilities, our liabilities, and our capital assets, which all would affect our ratios given to us by the bank. So any account that may potentially affect those accounts would be considered high risk because precisely of the risk of continuation of exploitation of the company, since it's depending on the loan and those ratios. Now, Christian, can you explain a little bit more about what we mean about material amounts?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing the audit, you have a limited number of budgeted hours to work on this. So you want to focus on accounts that are material to the users of the financial statements. This means we're going to focus on numbers that are big enough that they could influence the decision of the bank on whether they recall their debt or not. Now, Josh, what can you tell me about relevance?
So what we're looking about when we're talking about relevance is, again, the users of the financial statements. It'll always be coming back in this case since there's such a high risk on the continuation of exploitation that is due to the loan. The main user, once again, is the financial institution. And anything that we think would be relevant to the financial institution and to the fact that it may help keep the loan towards the company, we have decided to address that within our audit concerns and the accounting topics that we will address. Now, the first accounting topic is retained earnings that my colleague Christian here will help develop.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually found an accounting error in the financial statements, which brought a large amount of concern to us. So if you flip through to their income statement, they actually had a loss which was not carried forward to their retained earnings this year, which means that the equity in the company is overstated, and that has a direct impact on their debt-equity ratio, which can impact the decision of the bank. In correcting that financial statement, if you carry forward the loss into their retained earnings, it actually increases their debt-equity ratio above the accepted level, which creates a going concern issue. Moving forward with revenue recognition. So globally in auditing, revenue recognition is one of the leading causes of fraud in public corporations. So in any audit that you go on, this is going to be an area where you do a lot of detailed testing. There are two main areas for this company where we want to look into the revenue they've recognized. First of all, for a long-term contract. They have a 2-year contract to provide, install, and maintain hot water tanks. We're 1 year into the contract right now, and they've recognized $750,000. So going off the matching principle, you want to gradually recognize this revenue as you're earning it, which means that the percentage of completion method is a really good tool to determine how much revenue you can recognize every year. What this means is that you should test how much progress have they made on the contract, and whatever percentage they've completed is the same percentage of revenue that should be recognized to date. They've recognized $750K. That means that they should have completed 44% of the work. When you go in to audit this client, you need to do the detailed testing to confirm and verify that they've actually completed that amount of work. In the case that they've completed less work, that means that their revenue is overstated. Again, that'll impact their debt equity ratio, which is really bad in terms of the bank. The second topic we wanted to look into was a grant which is being provided by the government for their development work into solar water heating. So this company has actually recognized this $400,000 grant already, and this is 100% a big no-no. This needs to be reversed because the grant has not been earned yet. It will be earned at the time that the development has been completed. So we actually need to reverse this journal entry. Again, the reduction in revenue will affect their equity and ultimately affect their debt equity ratio, which means that the bank may be recalling their debt. Now, moving forward, another big issue is development costs. So this particular client has invested quite a bit into development projects, and that leads us into some really interesting accounting questions. So to my two judges, let's say you're actually working for the client. Let's say you're investing all kinds of money into this development project to heat water with solar power. It sounds like a great idea. You're investing a lot of money into this, but you're not certain that you're going to reap the profits of it. So that leads us to think, should we be conservative and should we expense it right now? Or should we capitalize it and then match the expense to the period when we hopefully benefit from this in the future? Well, GAAP gives us 5 criteria to make that decision on whether you can capitalize or expense it. First of all, I'm not going to read this list to you, but these last 2 criteria, do you have enough financing to complete the project? And the engineers who are working on it are saying, no, we need $100,000 more and we don't know where we're going to get it from. That means we're not certain this project is going to be completed, and so we're going to expense these costs right now.
Moving on to, there is also a $30,000 that they recommended in inventory where it should actually be expensed as research and development. Because what VTL has done actually is that they have bought $30,000 worth of inventory, but that they are using towards testing, towards the research and development of their new product. The reason why they classified this as inventory is because it is the same product that they normally use as inventory. However, again, that is a big no-no. They should definitely not do that, and they should obviously have expense this amount of $30,000 since it's brought towards research and development. Again, it will affect the capital assets and, of course, affect their debt-to-equity ratio once again because of this accounting error. Now I'll be passing on to my partner Maxime, who will be talking to you guys a little bit about the warranty provisions.
So the warranty is another sort of key concern that we had when conducting our investigation. Generally, when you account for warranty, you need to create a provision or a liability to account for the future repayments, in this case for the defective or too hot water heaters that sometimes are not wanted by the company's clients. So in that accounting for the liability or provision, we need to have an estimation in how much percent or how many in terms of water heaters would fail and would require repayment to the client. And we have two estimations from this case. We have the estimation from the owner, and we also have the estimation from the engineer. The owner says there's going to be another 50 cases where we'd have to repay our clients, whereas the professional judgment of the engineer was that another additional 300 on top of the already 50 would need to be repaid for our water heaters. Now, when taking a look at these two, we would use the estimation of the engineer. Since the engineer has a more professional judgment, the owner, Jean, does not directly work with the machines and does not have that perspective, as well as the owner might have an incentive to understate the liability. Another problem is that in the way that they're currently treating their warranty. Currently, they are expensing the costs that they need to give back, but this does not follow the matching principle, in which the expenses must be matched to the periods in which they are incurred. So by creating this liability or provision account, we can properly match the expense of defective water heating units, in which we'd have to refund our customers, to the year in which they were sold, instead of years afterwards when a client might actually return and we'd have to repay our clients. So if we take a look at sort of the materiality, you can see that there's a big difference in terms of the cost of the engineer's judgment and the owner's judgment, as well as the impact of accepting the owner's judgment would decrease the current ratio and increase the debt-to-equity ratio when it comes to looking at the agreement with the loan from the bank. Another provision that we have to account for is that with a contractor. In our $1.7 million contract with contractor, there is a fee associated with not completing the project on time. And with recent news that the supplier for the company may not be able to get all the materials necessary for the project to be completed on time, it is appropriate to create a provision account for the cost of that penalty in the case where the company is not able to complete this on the agreed deadline.
So I'm going to be moving forward talking a little bit about the potential lawsuits that are going on within this company. So we all know that they're going through a lawsuit currently for about $2 million. Now, Jean has decided that this wasn't required in the financial statements since the lawsuit wasn't deposed until 2016. However, this is an event that is posterior to the closure date that directly affects the financial statements of 2015. Because of this, we have to include it in the financial statements of 2015, whether it be in the notes or an actual amount. Now, what determines the fact that we put it in the notes or actually put in the actual amount is if the eventual payment is more likely than not. Since we do not have a professional opinion from a lawyer and we just have Jean's opinion, who again might be biased towards making the company look more favorable in order to hold the loan, we can't really say that there's for sure going to be an eventual payment or that they're for sure going to win the lawsuit. So, and given that case, it is absolutely imperative that we put the fact that there was a lawsuit within the financial statements. Again, the fact that it is a $2 million lawsuit, which is a massive lawsuit when you're looking at the cash flow issues in the company, when you're looking again at the ratios that the company has to maintain for its bank loans, it is a massive issue because it could potentially affect their financing. So, considering the user is the bank, once again, it is absolutely necessary that we have to put the actual lawsuit within the financial statements. Not only that, but it also might be interesting to go see professional opinion to seek about future lawsuits, since their water heaters are currently burning some of the users. This is why they were using the warranties and other provisions like that. It was because the water heaters were heating out too much because of potential activity. However, there was a pretty big potential for future lawsuits because of that eventuality. So it might be interesting to have a professional opinion by a lawyer or someone else to see if we should include this information within the financial statements or not. So if there's there's a bigger probability of there being future lawsuits due to this information. So in conclusion, I'd like to kind of recap a little bit the accounting topics that we've addressed to you guys and kind of link them with the risks that we've been going forward through our assumptions. So the first accounting we were talking about was recognition of revenue. There were a lot of mistakes in the recognition of revenue and lots of stuff that we're kind of not sure of. So like the 1.7 million, is it really 44% complete? So when we're going through with our audit, we definitely have to do those testings because that revenue recognition will affect your debt to equity ratio in the end because it'll affect your revenues. When you're looking at, for example, the mistake that they made within the retained earnings, again, that is a massive indicator that the owner might have a bias towards manipulating the numbers in order to keep his loan. Because it seems like it's a very simple mistake, right? It's a subtraction that you're going to have to do. However, the owner somehow omitted it. We're not accusing the owner of anything, but it is a risk to take into consideration, particularly when you're looking at the fact that they are dependent on the loan. Again, the warranty ties back again to that risk, to the current ratio, as well as the debt to equity ratio, because it affects those major accounts. Your provisions will actually affect your current liabilities, so it will affect your current ratio, as well as affect your expenses, so it will also move forward to affect your debt to equity ratio. And then, as well as the potential lawsuits, then again, like if ever they lose a $2 million lawsuit, that is a lot of money to lose. And it is very damaging for that company to lose $2 million. So I don't think the company is in measure to afford the loss of that lawsuit. And the users of the financial statements have to absolutely know that there's this going on in order to make an appropriate decision, whether to keep the loan within the company or to actually revoke it. The last thing that we kind of want to address is the audit engagement appropriate? According to me, it's very difficult to say at this time because this audit engagement currently has a lot of risks associated to it. With those high risks, you're going to have to do more detailed testing. You're going to have to put in a lot more time to the audit. So the audit will be overall a lot more expensive. a lot more expensive. And since this company already is losing, it's bleeding money, and the fact that if you consider the current mistake that they're already below their debt to equity ratio and will most likely lose a loan to the bank, personally, I wouldn't recommend going forward with this audit because there's just too many risks involved. The current cash flow problems indicate that the company may not have time or the resources to pay for our audit, and there are a lot of issues relating to that. So thank you very much, and I hope you had a good one.
Je vais en premier. C'est correct avec les questions en français ou...
Ouais,
C'est correct.
Ok. Là, vous nous mentionnez un problème de going concern. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose qu'on fait par rapport à ça? Est-ce que ça doit être divulgué dans les états financiers ou qu'est-ce que
The issue is that the cumulative effect of all of these accounting changes will put their key ratios out of balance, so it'll be above the maximum ratios allowed by the bank. If the bank were to recall their financing, then yes, there would be going concern issues because they wouldn't have the current assets to pay off their current liabilities in that event.
And to build on upon what my colleague Christian was saying, is it would definitely be important to mention in the notes that there are going concerns in the notes of the financial statements. Have an actual clause saying that the company might not actually continue within the next year of operations because, judging by the current state, it is more likely than not that they will not be able to continue their current their current business.
Le client demandait s'il y avait d'autres référentiels comptables possibles pour lui. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous avez adressé ou avez-vous des conseils là-dessus?
Bien, merci pour la question. Nous, on avait décidé personnellement de ne pas l'adresser parce qu'en tant qu'auditeur, on n'est pas censé conseiller notre client sur quel référentiel utiliser. Cependant, si on voulait faire des revenus futurs avec le client à travers de nous par rapport à la consultation, moi personnellement, puis je pense qu'on est pas mal tous d'accord avec ça, c'est qu'on garderait les MCECF, vu que c'est une très petite compagnie, puis que les FRS engendraient des coûts beaucoup plus élevés qui sont un petit peu inutiles dans le cas de M. Jean. Oui, ça ouvrait peut-être la porte à d'autres opportunités de financement à travers d'achat d'actions et tout encore, mais cependant, c'est encore une compagnie qui est beaucoup trop petite pour aller public, pour pouvoir la vente d'actions. Donc, moi, je garderais les MCECF. Surtout que aussi le seul utilisateur vraiment des états financiers en ce moment, c'est la banque. Donc, pas besoin d'aller avec un référentiel qui est plus grand que ça.
vous avez mentionné, là, pour vous citer, vous avez dit « put in the financial statement » par rapport à ce qui était du lawsuit. Est-ce que vous en avez mentionné deux, finalement, des lawsuits. Vous avez parlé de celui de 2 millions, puis celui des potentielles brûlures reliées au chauffe-eau. Donc, j'aimerais juste peut-être, si vous pouvez clarifier, quand vous dites « put in financial statement », est-ce que vous parlez de le mettre en voie de note ou bien de le mettre comme passif?
Okay, so I can actually speak to this a little bit. So in terms of the current lawsuit for $2 million, they would need a professional judgment to determine is a loss more likely than not? Meaning, do you have greater than a 50% probability of this liability actually materializing for your company? If yes, then you would have to enter the liability in your financial statements. We don't have that information, so we're assuming that the owner's judgment is correct. They're most likely going to win and they won't have the liability. In that case, because there's a possibility, you still want the detail given in the notes to the financial statements.
As well, for the potential earnings, if we would mention it, it would obviously be through the notes. Again, since we don't have a professional opinion yet and we don't have any actual lawsuits with numbers figuring on them, we wouldn't actually provide a liability for that amount. It would, of course, be a note. Of course, only if it is more likely than not that there will be lawsuits following this incident.
Le fait de ne pas respecter les ratios, ça a un impact sur le classement de la dette. Y a-t-il des moyens comme auditeur d'aller chercher quelque chose qui permettrait de laisser la dette dans le classement long terme?
So of course, if the bank was hoping to collect this debt immediately, then it would be a current liability rather than a long-term liability. However, most likely in that situation, our client would have to make arrangements because they may not have the capacity to pay that back right at once. So you would see what negotiations are made with the bank, and then you can reclassify a certain portion of that debt as current. Does that answer your question?
Finalement, là, concernant l'aide gouvernementale là, qu'on voyait dans le dossier, est-ce que vous avez une position par rapport à ce point-là?
Si jamais on devait la comptabiliser.
Merci pour la question. Justement, tout à fait, il ne faut pas la comptabiliser. Puis vu que la compagnie l'a comptabilisée en tant que telle, il faut l'enlever du revenu. En revenant justement par rapport à ce point, on avait calculé justement l'effet du ratio en l'enlevant du revenu. Puis le ratio dette à capitaux propres, ça augmenterait à 2,75, donc ça serait beaucoup plus haut le maximum, le plafond de 2 que la banque aurait mis. Donc, justement, vu qu'ils l'ont comptabilisé, c'était justement une grande erreur de leur part parce qu'ils n'ont pas rempli les conditions de recevoir cette subvention encore. Et puis, justement, pour nous, ça devrait juste pas être comptabilisé, on devrait l'enlever tout à fait des revenus.
Mettons qu'on doit la comptabiliser. Est-ce qu'ils l'ont comptabilisé correctement? Ou...
Bien, ils ne devraient pas le comptabiliser dans les revenus propres en tant que tel. Ils devraient le comptabiliser dans la section des autres revenus. Vu que ce n'est pas les activités principales de l'entreprise de justement faire de la recherche et du développement, on devrait peut-être comptabiliser le 400 000 du gouvernement, pas dans les revenus d'exploitation, mais bien dans les autres revenus, donc dans les résultats globaux de la compagnie en tant que telle.
C'est terminé.
Merci.
And I'm asking me why would I feel better as an average guy, but I know that's just a lie. Pour up a glass and get high. Wonder if this rockstar life might take a toll on me like I'm asking to die. Going on